What's up, guys? Today I am at high school football field, so I'm going to do some sprints. Like I said, getting back into a lot more sprinting, a lot more plyos, a lot more conditioning. So the plan for the day is my warm-up is going to be some build-up sprints. The build-ups will be about 40 to 50 yards, just gradually increasing intensity until I kind of feel ready to go. And I'm going to pair up the build-ups with some plyos. The plyos are going to be single leg bounding for distance and some continuous broad jumps. And I'll probably do, I don't know, 4 to 6 rounds of that or so. That's probably all I'll need to get warmed up to do my sprints. My sprints are going to be shorter distance, so I'm going to do some 10s, some 15s, and some 20s, and maybe some 25s, depending on how I feel. And then I'll finish up with conditioning, which is going to be some tempo runs. For my tempo runs, I'm just going to do 100-yard tempo runs because I got a football field here, so it's easy distance to know how far I'm running. I'm going to gradually work up to 110, so taking me back to like college football when we did a bunch of 110s for conditioning. So yeah, that's the plan for the day, and I'll answer some questions. I have a little rant I want to go on about the use of hyperbole and how it's a really awful form of communication because it kind of just like it makes a lot of topics gray when people use hyperbole instead of trying to be precise with their arguments, but I'll get into that later. And then it's referring back to a certain post I saw from Nick Layden, and I got no problem with Nick Layden. I think he has some good information out there, but he talked about how, like, I'll put the post on the screen, but how a lot of athletes, and he uses the term athletes very loosely, I use athletes in a much more precise way, and I'll get into that later, but it talks about how, like, a lot of athletes think that the weight room and getting stronger and strength training is going to, quote, solve all of their problems.
Hey, your lifts don't transfer to acceleration, top end speed, or rapid change of direction. You're really wasting your time as an athlete. The gym should support your sprint work, not replace it. And I think too many athletes lead and try to really lean into the gym is going to solve all my problems in terms of speed when it's exactly the opposite.
I'll answer some questions here too, but that's the plan for the day, guys. Before I get started, again, shout out to Barbell Apparel. We're in their tanks, we're in their short shorts, really good training gear. Just go to the link in the description of this video, and let's get to it. Right, so I kind of lied about the warm-up. One thing I like to do before doing the warm-up is just some light aerobic activity for like 90 seconds to 180 seconds, a minute and a half to 3 minutes. Really easy way to do this on a football field is just jog the length of the football field, down, back, maybe a third time. Or if you're at a track, quick, easy 400 to 800 meter run before you get into the real warm-up. So that's what I'm going to do here first. Now I just kind of catch my breath for like 30 seconds, and then I'll get into the plyos and the build-ups for the warm-up. So yeah, I'm going to go 50 yards for these build-ups. Probably start at like 60 to 70% speed. I'll run about 40 to 50 yards down, coast through an extra 20 to 30 yards, walk it back to that 50-yard line, do the same thing back, and then I'll pair it up with my bounds and my broad jumps. I'll do the broad jumps first. I'm doing all of these consecutive, so I'm not sticking my reps in between. Just 5 consecutive broad jumps. This first one's probably gonna be pretty bad, but I got these skills gates with the cones. I'll mark my distance every time and try to beat it every time. Just under 16 yards there. Now I'll walk it back, do my single leg bounds. I'll go right leg first and left leg back, going 5 on each leg. Just about 14 yards there. Now my left leg is so much worse than my right because I've had so many ankle sprains on my left. So I leak so much force through my left ankle. My ankle just can't have the same stiffness as my right to transmit all that force into the ground. Yeah, just under 14 yards there. Yeah, so anyways, about that Nick Layden post, and nothing against him, because I see so many people offer this take online, on Instagram, on Twitter, sometimes on YouTube. But the point he was making was that, well, his point, what he specifically said, and I'll put it on the screen so you can see it, but I'm probably not going to be able to exactly repeat it verbatim, but he said, athletes think that getting stronger or the weight room is going to, quote, solve all of their problems. And I have so many issues with that take. Number one, using hyperbole like that. When you're using the term solve, quote, all of your problems, it's hyperbole. I guess I don't know what the definition of hyperbole is, but it's just like an extreme exaggeration, which takes away from like a more reasonable point that he could be making. But like, nobody thinks that any one singular thing is going to, quote, solve all of their problems. So it like muddies the water. Or a reasonable point he could make is that some athletes, maybe the athletes who are more gifted physically than the athletes who have a better tactical knowledge, technical skills of their sport, want to rely on their physical qualities to allow them to get over their lack of technical and tactical traits in order to persevere and succeed in their sport, which is probably true for some people. But here's the other thing with athletes, and I'm talking, when I say athletes, I'm referring to people who compete in a sport, in a competitive sport, not recreational sport, but in a competitive sport at a level higher than high school. That's kind of, I'm just gonna set that as my arbitrary line for this video. So anyone playing college, any level, Division I to NAIA, professional, semi-professional, athletes, dude, I worked in Division I athletics. The vast majority of athletes do not think that. The vast majority of athletes do not think that the strength training, that the weight room work is going to, quote, fix all of their problems, or let alone fix any of their problems. Most of them don't give a shit about the weight room. Most of them actually, it's probably the opposite. The weight room and getting stronger is probably going to improve the performance of a lot of athletes that don't necessarily think it will. So that's, most athletes, quote, athletes, people who compete at a high level, higher than high school, don't train that hard. That's just the truth. And they probably could benefit from training harder in the weight room and getting stronger. That's just the truth with like most, quote, athletes, people who are actually athletes, not high school kids, not recreational, quote, athletes. But let me get this next set of broad jumps in here. Nice, 17 yards. Last time I was at the high school here, I was on the track. I was doing longer distance sprints. I did some 200 meters, and there was Phi Ed out here. Kind of made it a little awkward. The Phi Ed teacher started talking to me while I was recording stuff for Instagram. Anyways, all right, I'll do my bounds. Just under 15 yards there. Just about 14 yards there. But no, so yeah, like I said, most real athletes probably could benefit from training harder in the weight room, and probably could benefit by taking it more seriously, as opposed to the point that Nick was making, that a lot of athletes, or many athletes, think that the weight room is going to, quote, solve all of their problems. Because trust me, no athletes actually think that. Very few athletes think that. And then, like I said, using hyperbole in that situation, where you're saying like, quote, all of their problems, it just like muddies the water from a more reasonable point, which I stated earlier, that some athletes who rely on their physical skill sets, because that is their, that's what they rely on for sports, overplay that hand, thinking it's going to get them over the hump to surpass whatever inadequacies they have regarding technical skills, tactical skills, psychological components of sport to improve their sports performance. But that is the minority. Trust me, that is the minority of athletes. All right, next broad jump set here. See if I can beat that 17 yards. Just by a hair. Trying to catch Blaine McConnell, guys. Now that I'm cutting, dropping some weight, Blaine is a freak. He's so athletic. You guys should check out his seated broad jump that he did on Tim Riley's Instagram. He must be down in Texas right now, or the last few days for Coach Him Up podcast. Or maybe he's going to that conference that Tim's putting on. Blaine, if you see this, I'm coming for you. 15 there. For anyone who might be curious with the split that I'm doing for the sprints and plyos, just to kind of keep it easy, is I'm doing an acceleration day and a max velocity day. It's really just like shorter sprints day and longer sprints day. So like today, 10s, 15s, 20s, maybe 25s. The other days I'm doing 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, and those max velocity days, I'm gonna keep increasing the distance for each rep. And I'm gonna increase the distance for these acceleration days too, but it's always gonna be a shorter day in the week and a longer day in the week. There's a lot of other ways you can split up your sprinting too. You can do like linear based sprinting days where it's just all in a straight line, paired with a non-linear based sprinting day where maybe you're doing some S curves, maybe you're doing some sort of change of direction. Maybe you're doing sprints after one 90-degree or 180-degree cut, something like that. But for Haas Concurrent right now, we're doing acceleration day, max velocity day, or another way to think about it is shorter sprints, longer sprints. And with the longer sprint days, the conditioning is going to be things like repeat 200s, repeat 400s, things like that. And the conditioning for the shorter sprints days is going to be shorter. Like today I'm doing 100-yard tempo runs. And again, it's all going to increase throughout the summer because I need to build up this sprinting volume, get back into shape, get back into sprinting shape, being more explosive again. 17 and a half. All right, moving on to the sprints here, guys. So I got some 10s, some 15s, some 20s. Maybe I'll do some 25s after that. But what I decided to do, just universally now with all of my sprints, especially for the short sprints, I guess I haven't really decided what I'm gonna do with the longer sprints, is I'm always gonna do a 1 yard lead-in, okay? I'm not really concerned about a 5-yard fly. I guess for right now, I'll probably do some like true max fly work where I'm giving myself a bigger lead-in, but just for consistency, I'm always gonna do a 1 yard lead-in. So for anyone on Train Heroic, on Haas Concurrent right now, if you see a 10-yard sprint, it's really an 11-yard sprint if you got the timing gates, just because that's the only way to get consistent measuring. So I'm starting 1 yard behind behind the gates, running 10 yards, and that's my rep. I don't know if you guys can see it on camera, but that's a 148. So I'll actually take that for my first rep of the summer. I'm gonna have to go back through a bunch of old footage to see what my normal 10-yard splits are. I'm gonna do 2 to 3 reps per distance here. All right, a little bit slower at 1.50. I'll do one more here. A question here, in a world where you can only choose one between Olympic lifts or sprints, what would be your choice? It would be sprinting. Sprinting would be my choice over Olympic lifts. But I guess like if you're only asking for my preference and like what I enjoy doing, it's gonna be, yeah, it's gonna be sprinting most likely. But if you're asking like what's gonna provide more long-term results from an athletic development standpoint, like I've said before, you can't replace Olympic lifts doing other things, even sprinting, but you also can't replace sprinting by doing other things like Olympic lifts. And if you're asking me to choose between the two in terms of like a preference, I'm going to choose sprinting most likely. I guess depending on my mood, some days I'll probably choose Olympic lifts, but overall it's going to be sprinting. But if you're also asking me to choose between the two based on like what's going to yield greater long-term adaptations that's conducive to both health and fitness and sports performance, it's going to be sprinting. By far. Not by far, but it's going to be sprinting. Yeah, so that's the problem with these skills gates. Sometimes it glitches out. It always works when you're outside, or sorry, when you're inside. But when you're outside, it's like, it's cloudy out right now. Sometimes the sun kind of affects it, but yeah, sometimes it glitches out. All right, I'm going to move it back for 15s. All right, 209. I'm going to record every rep this summer, so I know where I'm at. 'Cause a lot of times I forget to record, like actually write them down in my Train Heroic app. All right, question here. Why is there so little direct back work in the way of rows and pull-ups / chin-ups in Haas 2.0? All right, so this is a good question that I've gotten before. I just would reject the premise that there's little to no upper back work. Anytime you're pulling from the floor, is my camera getting crooked on me? Did it move? I don't know. Anytime you're pulling from the floor, deadlifting, any deadlift variation, snatch grip deadlifts, it is moving on me. That's better. Anytime you're pulling from the floor, snatch grip deadlifts, pause deadlifts, deficit deadlifts. Anytime you're bent over and you're holding something, that is giving a great stimulus for the upper back in terms of both strength and hypertrophy. Now, I've made this point before. You'll often hear the take that deadlifts aren't a great hypertrophy exercise for the back because it's an isometric. Not if you're doing it heavy enough. If you're doing it heavy enough, it's actually a supramaximal eccentric on the spinal erectors and like the muscles that act on the scapula to retract them. So that'd be like the rhomboids, the teres. If you're doing it heavy enough, it's a supramaximal contraction on that musculature. So it's actually a really good hypertrophic stimulus for the back. So I would reject the premise that it doesn't contain very much direct upper back work. But go to my exercise tier list video. I think that's what it's called. And I kind of go into details about like which types of movements and muscles I prioritize in terms of exercise selection. I put, quote, upper back work, which would be like rows, pull-ups. It could be in tier 1. You could make the case it should be in tier 1, but I put it in tier 2, and just go check that video out. I elaborate on it a little bit more. All right, 207. I felt myself reach a little bit crossing that finish line, which is something I told myself I'm not going to do. So I need to be disciplined on that. One, because that kind of cheats the system a little bit, because sometimes you can reach your foot out. I don't know if that actually makes you faster because it changes your mechanics. Maybe if you just like continue your normal running gait, that's better. But the other thing is you don't want to pull a hammy, and you can pull a hammy doing that. Rep 3 here. All right, 205. Third one was the best one. Gonna go to 20s now. All right, 263, which I feel like is really slow. Do I recommend HOS for a football athlete preparing for the season? I don't recommend either HOS Project 1 or HOS Project 2.0 preparing for a football season. Way too much grindy strength work, not enough sprinting, not enough plyos, not enough conditioning. Not enough conditioning that's going to be conducive to preparing you for the physical demand, like the conditioning demands of football. So no, I wouldn't. If you want to do it as a football player, it's got to be in the off season. Has to be in the off season. 0.54. I think that's a much more respectable number. All right, I'm going to do a third. Flip the camera vertical for this one so I can put it on Instagram. 2.48 on that last run. So that was a pretty good dose of sprinting for me. 9 total reps, some 310s, 315s, 320s. For the conditioning, like I said, it's some tempo runs, 100-yard tempo runs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run all of these at 15 seconds. So in college, we did 110s, and I had to run it in, well, I was a linebacker, so linebackers had to run it in 17 seconds. But I typically ran my conditioning with the skills, who had to run 110s in 15 seconds. So I'm gonna do 15 seconds, shorten the distance down by 10 yards from that. So I'm gonna go 100 yards, 15 seconds. And it also makes it easier to do a 1-to-4 work to rest ratio. So I go 15 seconds of work, and then 1-to-4 work to rest ratio would be 1 minute off. So I'm gonna hold the stopwatch, hit 15 seconds, restart the stopwatch, let it run for a minute, then I go again. So I have 2 sets of 8 reps. Yeah, and that's my conditioning. I'll probably take 2 to 3 minutes between sets. All right, just gonna run the sideline here. I don't know if you can see that ladder right there. It looks like there's cones in the middle of the field that almost look like it's for a band. Like there's I think it's called the conductor who stands on that thing. So it looks like it's where the conductor stands to direct the band, the marching band it's like graduation time. So maybe there's some sort of pep rally out here later. All right, rep 1, 15 seconds for 100 yards, 1 minute of rest, coming back 15 seconds every time. 13.82 for the speed on that one. So I can slow down a little bit. I was doing 17 seconds or 19 seconds. That's what the bigs had to run. Getting to a 1-to-4 work to rest ratio just like makes the math more complicated. It's really not that hard, but that extra 2 to 4 seconds on either side. Just do a minute. 15 seconds times 4, 1 minute, easy. 14.85. All right, now that I'm doing this conditioning right now, it makes me, I'm gonna put another video out about conditioning, specifically conditioning for football. and why the whole like sprint-based football performance or preparation that Tony Holler talks about doesn't actually prepare you for the demands of football. I can't talk about it too much depth right now. I'm gonna make a video about that. Why that's dumb. The more shit I see from Tony Holler, where he just doubles down and doubles down on the sprint-based football conditioning stuff, the more I dislike it. So I'm gonna do that. All right, one more down and back, and then I got a long rest in between sets. Longer rest. Not super long, couple minutes. All right, that's all I got, guys. Thanks for watching.